And here we are once again at the end of another year. 2024 is finally coming to a close, and in all honesty, I could not be happier to start the new year. Because when it comes to animated films, this year has to be one of the weakest years I've covered in a long time. This year stunk. It's not just because there weren't a lot of real true highlights this year, although that didn't help. It was that the bad films this year were really bad. I cannot begin to tell you how many clunkers there were in 2024 that lingered horribly in my mouth after I saw them. If you want to know how bad this year was, I gave 2 animated films my lowest possible grade, and it was also the first year this decade I gave a film that grade. That's really rotten. But despite that, I still managed to put together my 5 favorite animated films of the year, and I can say that these are a couple of films I will be looking back and remembering a bit fondly despite the chaos. Now, like always, this list is 100% subjective. If you agree or disagree, totally fine. Film is a subjective art form after all. And also, if you want to know what I thought of films like Robot Dreams, Flow, Look Back, or Memoir of a Snail, be sure to check out my foreign and independent animated film recommendations in my Flow and More video. But without further ado, let's get started. This is my top 5 best animated films of 2024. Number 5. 2024 was a bad year for Paramount. Yeah, this year just did not go the way they planned. They've been on shaky ground for a while, and I've talked about that plenty of times with the animation division, but this year it seems like the ground is just getting ready to collapse. Not helping matters is that merger, which I think is about to go as well as AOL and Time Warner did. It's been a nightmare to watch, and quite frankly, I'm worried about what will happen to their animation divisions if this goes through, both with Nickelodeon and Paramount, because things could get worse. But there is one silver lining I can say about this. If they keep managing to making films like this, then things could also be getting better. Transformers 1 is quite easily the biggest surprise of the year, and even I'm surprised it actually cracked my list, because I did not have the highest expectations going into it for numerous reasons. Namely, its god-awful trailers that I have no idea why they were approved. Yet, despite how badly it was set up, this film ended up becoming the biggest surprise of the year, and was definitely a lot more bolder than it was advertised. On the surface, it might just seem like an average origin story showcasing how Optimus Prime and Megatron went from close friends into bitter rivals, when there's actually a lot more under the surface to it. There's a darker narrative in here about the corruption of governments, with the 2 characters striving to take down a tyrant and rebuilding society, with one striving for peace and a democratic view, while the other wanting revenge and starting a dictatorship. It's a really tragic story, and it's one that's warranted, and I really have to respect a film, especially one that's about the Transformers, going for something this bold. Not only that, it has some stellar animation provided by ILM, top-notch action sequences all directed brilliantly by Josh Cooley, some brilliant performances with Brian Tyree Henry dominating the film, as well as some exceptionally dark moments that don't hold back and play it safe. This really was a film that had so many surprises up its sleeves, and one that I really enjoyed, and one that should have been a huge financial success. But it wasn't. And Paramount only has themselves to blame. The film sadly underperformed quite badly at the box office, which can be blamed on its horrifically bad trailers, as well as Paramount's questionable choice on the day to release this film, which killed any chance of it becoming a sleeper hit like Elemental, and also likely killed those trilogy plans they had in mind for this film. And it's really a shame, because this was such a bold step forward for both Paramount animation-wise, as well as the Transformers franchise. This film deserved so much better. I do think that if the film had a much better first act and a tighter screenplay though, that this could have been a lot higher on the list, but as is, it's still a really damn fun animated film that easily stood out as the biggest surprise of the year. With great action, dark moments, and great performances, this film did have more than meets the eye. Number 4. Netflix's animated films have been odd lately. At the start of the decade, they were the studio to beat in terms of animation, making exciting originals and even distributing other studios' fantastic films. But now, it seems like going into a new animated film released on there is sort of a gamble in terms of quality, as not only have their original films have taken a dip, but also the films they've picked up from other studios are quite terrible too. It's genuinely like a grab bag. But every once in a while, there's still a good animated film that'll come out on Netflix that really does showcase why, when the decade started, they were the studio to beat. Even if the film should have been released in theaters. I feel if there was any animated film that sadly really got overshadowed this year, it was Ultraman Rising. When it was released, it mostly went under the radar due to the animated films that were coming out in theaters at the time, and it was a shame because I think this was one of the best animated films that Netflix has produced in a long time. The film was a passion project that director Shannon Tittle has wanted to tell for a long time, even back at Sony Pictures Animation, and I'm glad he was able to get the chance to do so, because this film continued to show his great strength at storytelling that he brought to both Kubo and the Two Strings, as well as Lost Ollie. The story of a top-notch workaholic suddenly getting responsibility with a kid isn't anything new, especially in the world of animated filmmaking, but what separates this film from others is its stylish energy and heart. There is a lot of passion put on display throughout the film, and it's benefited by its really good messaging on parenting, as well as a father-child relationships, and also has some really well-defined characters who are very perfectly played by Christopher Sean and Gere Watanabe. This is a film that I could tell Tindo was passionate about getting off the ground for so long, and the way he brings his personal touch to this film, as well as showcasing the bonds of families while not being afraid to dip into darker subject matter, is always something I'm going to applaud. And above all else, this film is just absolutely gorgeous to look at. This is the other animated film that was animated by ILM this year, and I think that this is probably one of their best looking animated films to date, due to its amazing colors, thrilling action, and cool character designs. It didn't surprise me one bit to find out that animation legend Tony Fuccelli worked on this. Like I said before, it's a real shame that this film had to go under the radar due to how Netflix released it, and also just the fact that their algorithm just flat out sucks in general. But I'm hoping eventually this film can get a bigger audience than Soar, because there is a lot I loved about this, and I want to see more people talk about it, and also just see Tyndall get more recognition for his accomplishments in animation. But due to its great animation, fun story, and deeply drawn characters, Ultraman Rising is a film that truly soars. Number 3. Every year since I started doing this, it seems like I have at least one animated film that ends up in my top 5 that I like to call my wild card pick. It's basically the animated film that I have on my list that others would probably not put in their top 5. Not sure why this always happens, but I don't know, sometimes a film will connect with me more than it would for others. Like previously, films that have ended up as this wildcard pick are films like Vivo, My Father's Dragon, Elemental, and for this year, it was this. When it comes to Orion in the Dark, I've met a lot of people who have had differing opinions on it. Some people I know really loved it, while others had absolutely no idea what to make of it. It was a polarizing film, and I could totally see why. It's certainly not the kind of animated film that you would expect to see, especially coming from a studio like DreamWorks. And it might have been a bit too complex or abstract for some viewers, or just one that might have seemed like a rambling mess. And yet, its uniqueness and complexity is exactly the reason why I loved it. This is an animated film that doesn't play it safe, and screenwriter Charlie Kaufman delivered a film that could have been just another simple animated film about a young boy being shown the joys of nighttime. But instead, he crafted a unique film about overwhelming anxiety and dread while filling it with some distinct and memorable characters, as well as some hilarious dark humor. I still cannot get over how funny some of the night entity characters are. The other big benefit is the titular duo, both brilliantly portrayed by Jacob Tremblay and Paul Walter Hauser, who really sell their characters and make them complex, anxious, and yet lovable without pushing them into an archetypal caricature. Their chemistry is perfect, and it continues to show Charlie Kaufman's strength at writing awkward characters, alongside the way he picks apart storytelling tropes and gives the film a unique framing device. It really showcased a strong jump for him into the world of family films. While I still do think the film's downside is its ending, which gets way too complicated and tries to tie up all the loose ends and should have been a bit more simplified, if I had to be quite honest, I think that this film is still one of my favorite DreamWorks films as of late. There was just enough here for me to find this a captivating film, and one that continues to showcase their mature storytelling continuing to grow. The creativity on display, fantastic animation, hilarious performances, and interesting writing delivers all the punches I would have expected from them. I do wish this film could have gotten a theatrical release, but what can you do? This year might not have had a lot of films that shine brightly, but Orion in the Dark was easily one of them. Number 2. Look, I'm not gonna lie, these next two films are pretty much neck and neck for me as the best. It's a real apples and oranges decision I had to make because these two animated films did everything that I wanted an animated film to do. But if I had to be honest as possible, there was one film that barely edged it out as the best. And it seems only fitting that one of the most emotionally riveting animated films of 2024 was the sequel to the movie about emotions. Inside Out 2 had a lot of weight on its shoulders. Not only was it trying to really reignite Pixar's presence at the box office, but it was also continuing the film that is one of Pixar's most important crown jewels in the crown and one of the best animated films ever made. It had a lot of pressure being put on it, and yet it defied all the odds and was able to not only accomplish both tasks, but ended up perfecting them so well. The film became not only the highest grossing film of 2024, but also the highest grossing animated film of all time. And if I had to point to the reason, it's not because it was a sequel to a recognizable property, but because this was a great sequel. It understood how to take what was learned in the previous film and built upon it, resulting in a phenomenal continuation and one of the best animated sequels I've ever seen. It expands the inner world of the mind so brilliantly, fleshes out the struggles that teenagers face entering puberty, as well as showcasing some incredible character development by continuing to build Joy as one of the best animated protagonists ever made, as well as showcasing a lot of great new emotions, with anxiety being the major highlight. It also continues to be visually stunning and features some incredible production design, absolutely hilarious with top-notch comedy, and hits you hard so emotionally with a payoff so perfect that much like the first film, it got me to cry so hard. I said before that when the first Inside Out came out, it couldn't have come out at a better time, as a film highlighting the idea that it's okay to feel sadness was something that my depressed teenage self starting high school needed. And I can also say the same thing for this sequel as well. Over the past 2 years, my anxiety was starting to get out of control, especially as I was finishing film school, which resulted in the biggest panic attack I've ever had. And to see a film talk about anxiety in this honest of a manner and give me all the comfort I needed was everything I wanted to see. I've said before that I've been feeling burnt out by sequels due to how most I've seen have not been that great, and that there are plenty of them I am not looking forward to review later on in the decade, but animated sequels like Inside Out 2 give me hope that good stories can continue to get great follow-ups that expand the world, characters, and experience better than before. It's an emotionally riveting journey that I'm eager to revisit many more times getting older. Now, before I get to my number 1 pick, I do have a few honorable mentions that I can talk about, so let's get to those, in alphabetical order. Boy, I was surprised a lot of people really did not like the Garfield movie. And I mean, really did not like it. And sure, as a Garfield movie, this was quite strange and didn't have much to do with the comics. And I don't know, I had fun with it, I guess. Mainly because I thought it was a nice return for director Mark Dindal, who directed a pretty funny heist comedy that had some good laughs in it. I get why some don't like it, but personally, I don't think this is nearly as bad as what some people have said. Also, speaking of animated films I like more than most people, yeah, Kung Fu Panda 4 is the weakest of the saga, its pacing is rushed, and it could have greatly used the Furious 5. But it's still Kung Fu Panda. The story still had some great heart and mythology, the animation is still pretty fun and has some great action, and the old characters and new characters are still pretty fun and memorable. As far as the 4th animated films and franchises go, this is one of the ones I liked, and it's definitely better than other ones I've seen. It's certainly much more coherent and funnier than Despicable Me 4, I can tell you that. Seriously, fight the real enemy, guys. Piece by Piece is probably one of the most unique and interesting musical documentaries we got in a long time. And it's cool Lego animation provided by Pure Imagination Studios, and not Animal Logic, as I incorrectly stated in my review. Sorry about that. As well as some top-notch direction by Morgan Neville, helped make Pharrell's story an interesting watch from beginning to end. It could have gone a bit deeper into learning about him, but I still got something enjoyable and fun out of it at the end of the day, and I hope we get more animated documentaries like this in the future. And finally, we have That Christmas. This is easily one of the biggest charmers of the year, filled with a lot of cozy vibes, great animation, and a cast of lovable characters. I thought this was a big improvement for Locksmith Animation over their previous film, and it showcases their unique British charm in such a fun way. I'm very happy to see it become a modest hit on Netflix, and I'm eager and excited to see where this studio goes next with their upcoming films throughout the rest of the decade. And now, let's get to the very best. Number 1. Whenever I choose my number 1 pick, I don't want to go for the obvious choice. Like, it would be real easy for me to pick what I feel is the best animated film of the year because it's what every other big critic out there will say is the best and does this and that. But I typically don't do that. For me, I don't pick films because I feel that they do their best with their story, animation, and characters alone. I pick the best animated film of the year because it's always the one I personally connect with the most. It's a film that after peeling away the layers, I end up finding myself in more than any other film. I choose my favorite film not just on how great it is, but based on how much it strikes a major chord in me. And when it comes to my absolute favorite of the year, there was no other film that was more breathtaking and more personal to me than this. Here we go. DreamWorks has had an interesting journey in the 30 years they've been making animated films. They've had high points and they've had low points, but The Wild Robot is most certainly one of their absolute highest points they've ever achieved. They could have easily played it safe with this and made a film that was simple and sweet, but that's not what they did. Alongside director Chris Sanders, they took the many deep layers found within Peter Brown's original book and crafted a story with a heart so human and lively that it reaches boundaries I never would have expected. This is a film made by an animation studio and director at the top of their craft, and the results are simply breathtaking. It's a story mainly about just trying to survive and live in the odd environment you're put into, and every single person working on this gave it their all. The story of the robot who learns about compassion, the animation that pulls from Disney and Studio Ghibli and elevates it to another level, and the deeply drawn characters so beautifully written, so perfectly performed, and with such tight bonds that they feel more real than ever. It's just incredible. There's so much personal touch and heart found within this, and I ended up finding myself in both Roz and mainly Bright-Bill with the mother-son bond they shared, and it constantly shattered my heart and repaired it better than before. This film quite simply made me feel like a little kid all over again and reminded me of the wonder of going to the movies. It's a film that showcases the beauty of animated filmmaking and demonstrates the power that an artist's touch can bring to the screen that can't be created artificially. It's a film that shows that animation is a medium where artists can bring pure imagination, beauty, love, emotion, and boldness that you simply cannot get elsewhere. Sanders already cemented himself as an animation legend in the history books with films like Lilo and Stitch and How to Train Your Dragon, but The Wild Robot cements his legacy as an animation god. The kind of filmmaker whose legacy will be forever an inspiration and idol to young filmmakers. In a time where Hollywood continues making frustratingly pointless remakes to animated films, this demonstrates that animation still has so many doors to open and explore that grasp people's curiosity and hearts in ways that can't imagine. And if you need further proof that DreamWorks has so much more wonder to spare, this is it. And I'm so excited to see where they go in the next 30 years as well as continuing Roz's journey whenever the sequel comes out. In short, this is a great film. The Wild Robot, my personal favorite animated film of 2024. And with that, we're officially done with 2024. So, what's on the docket for 2025? Man, I'm happy to see them back again. This is gonna be so silly, and I'm all in on it. Ditto for this one as well. Oh, this is gonna be such a fun and emotional movie, isn't it? Oh, hell yes. Oh, hell yes! Another Roald Dahl adaptation should be interesting. More cartoon saloon supremacy coming our way. I approve. And another exciting Sony Pictures animation film. Looks pretty cool. Oh yeah, this too. Well, already 2025 seems to have a lot of potential, so hopefully this is going to be one exciting year for animation. Here's hoping for a good year. Till next time, folks.